Record and come.
Okay.
Brilliant. I've got it. Vangile, it's such a pleasure to have you. I mean, I remember the first time I came across you and I interviewed you, and my mind was just blown. And just based off the teachings that you give on your social media platforms, my relationship with money has improved. And I know I need to do the dedicated work for it to get even better. And that's why we're here. I mentioned you to Tubby and Leanne Lamini, who is the founder of End Girl Hate and Life Designed by Her. And when I said this is the work she does, she deals with trauma around finances and looking at our relationship with money, and specifically Black women and our relationship with finances and just ancestral trauma and what we've had to deal with in this country. They were like, what? We've never heard anyone speak about that before. So thank you so much for giving us your time. I know how valuable it is, and I'm so excited for everyone to hear what you've got to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Vangi, I know what a powerful story you have. But can you give us just a brief overview of what inspired your journey to help others understand energy and trauma concerning money? Because it always starts from a personal place.
Wow, yes. So, I mean, I've shared this story often, but not many people know it, right? Is that I went to do finance. I started off doing my finance degree at UCT because I grew up in a family where I was very lucky. I observed members of my family, my parents included, go to university, get their degrees, be employed. So I was like that, oh, education is important. I've seen it with almost every one of my aunts, uncles, parents, everyone was getting educated, right? But here's where it didn't really take with me, and how I ended up with going to study finance was that, oh, you can still be educated and end up broke and end up with financial issues at the end of the month, right? And because that's what I grew up seeing. It's like I saw all these doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, all of them like really struggling. They would make, not saying that they're not earning a good living, but still making ends meet was a struggle. Like really having financial freedom was a struggle. It's not to say that people were necessarily starving, but like what I was looking at was, wow, what about early retirement? What about this thing called financial freedom, where you can just do whatever you want and being in possession of your own time, being in control of your own time, right? Because that for me is what was also important. So I decided, okay, the issue is that they didn't study finance, right? I understand. If you're in medicine, you studied medicine. If you studied the law, you studied the law. So I studied finance at UCT, got my finance and my business science honors degree. And arrogant as I was at that age, now I've got like the finance degree, right?
Love the transparency.
You think you've got it figured out. Like, I'm going to get the job, I'm going to do this and everything. My first paycheck was gone within the first week. Wow. I was like, and here's the thing. It's like, I've been working part-time jobs when I was at UCT since my first day at UCT. Wow. Had jobs, but I thought that that's because I don't have a proper job. That's why I was always running out of money, never had enough money, all the stuff. And also I was half paying for my own bills, for my own studies at UCT. It took a while for me to actually get NSFAS at UCT because my dad, right, he's a pharmacist, and they look at your family's income. But I had such a terrible relationship with my family and my parents that like I then had to advocate for that and actually get them to sign these affidavits that I was like, I'm actually not willing to relationship with them. I'm not actually, it was so crazy. That's how I ended up on NSFAS at a later date, but it took me to third year. But from first year onwards, I was doing the bulk of paying my own fees and studying and everything. And I had several jobs, and I wouldn't go to res. I was at my own digs. It was just wild. So, I mean, all these factors, I couldn't really see my relationship with money because I was like, it makes sense that like all the money that I have is gone. So though when I started working, this happened, right? I was like, okay, all my money is gone in the first week. I was like, this is worse than when I was working my 3 jobs at UCT. Like, now everything is gone. So now I had an office job, right, with my degree. And what do? I go and I start and I get a waitressing job. I ended up actually getting 2 waitressing jobs to supplement my office job because I thought it was about the money. So then obviously things don't get better. And I go, okay, I'm going to go travel because if I earn dollars and pounds, I will make more money. I ended up working at a cruise ship, earned US dollars. Now, mind you, on a cruise ship, you don't have any expenses. But I never had money.
Wow.
Like, I was earning and I was just like, my money was going as fast as I was making it. And I would set a budget because finance graduate. I'd write a budget and it would just disappear. Like, I'd be like, I'm following the budget. What is happening? Right?
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm literally like, no jokes. I'm like witchcraft. Like, I don't know what's happening, but this is like next level witchcraft. I know witchcraft when I see it, right? So then I decide, okay, I'm going to keep traveling, but I'm going to also do my entrance exams and apply for an MBA, eventually get to do an MBA. The minute I finish my MBA, I start having panic attacks with money. I'm looking for better paying jobs. I have this idea. I'm like, I'm going to get a job that makes me more than $100,000 a year with my finance degree, the MBA, my experiences traveling, all these other experiences. And like, I know I've got a mind on me, I've got a brain on me, like I'm like a straight A student in the MBA program, all that. And at the time I was in Boston, Massachusetts. So what I also should preface this by saying is that I was traveling around the world and still experiencing these issues and working in different countries, in different currencies. So this is how I didn't just get to the witchcraft thing just by myself, right? It's because I honestly didn't know what was happening. And like that was the only probable experience for me. Like the only probable explanation. Because I mean, what the heck? So I ended up with this. So when I finished the MBA, that's when everything went really, really badly. Panic attacks led to me eventually being spending days in bed, not being able to get out of bed. Every time I had to manage money, and it was all centering around money. So you can imagine.
You were physically getting sick.
I was physically getting sick. My digestive system completely plunked out, by the way. It's only in recent years that I've really started to heal my digestive system. It took about 8 to 9 years, I would say, of solid somatic work to get my digestive system under control again, because it was crazy. I was living on Pepto-Bismol. I had acid reflux. It was insane because the anxiety, and there's a lot of links now because I've had to do lots of research. I did tons of research, and I think it helped that I was living in Boston. So I would literally meet, and like that I had access to certain people. So I would meet up with professors and ask really poignant questions on trauma. Do you think, when I found out what was going on, like a friend of mine said to me one day, this is how everything started for me, right? So I'm depressed, can't get out of bed, suicidal ideation, all around money, panic attacks, all of the things. And people close to me can see what's going on. But I think that's the other thing that we don't understand about mental health. Some people saw me happy, self-confident, and then the people closest to me were seeing the spiral, and some of my friends would like exchange shifts to make sure that I'm never fully on my own for long periods, which was really, really powerful. And I'm super grateful to this day because I'm just like, wow, that took a lot for other humans to see another human being struggling like that and step in. But as I did the work, one of my friends one day comes to visit with some other friends, and these friends of hers, which are new friends to me, are like, maybe you should go check out the Vipassana meditation. It's a form of meditation. It gets you into your body. Maybe go try it out. And you know, when you hear something and you don't even ask questions, you're just like, I know this is what I need.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was playing, I was going deeper into chanting, meditation. I had done therapy throughout my teens. I'd been in therapy throughout my teens for depression. So I knew what therapy was. I'd gone through the path of therapy. And I was like, but this is coming, my depression is coming back with a vengeance. I want something that is going to work with the panic attacks and work with me physically, because I still hadn't understood trauma at that point, right? I just knew something is happening and it's got to do with my body, it's got to do with my emotions, and it's got to do with money. And nobody and everyone is telling me all these different things. And I was like, no, these things are somehow interconnected. And friends had given me affirmations and visualization work. I've watched The Secret, I've done all of the affirmation stuff, and my stuff got worse. Like that's when my depression took it up a notch, when I started doing the affirmations and I started visualizing. And I was like, and so now I was really convinced that there was something wrong with me, right? Why is this all working? Because this seemed to be working for all my friends, but not me. And that's how I ended up in Vipassana. And till this day, I'm still a Vipassana meditator, and I promote Vipassana everywhere. So you probably heard me talk about Vipassana constantly all the time, because it was one of the most transformative things for me. So for 10 days, I took a vow of silence. People were like, oh, you're going to have to take a vow of silence and eat vegan. At the time, I'd been vegetarian since I was 16. Now I'm vegan, right? And they were like, you'll have to go vegan/vegetarian. I was like, oh, perfect. Even better. Right? Take a vow of silence for 10 days. I was like, I think I can do that. Like, I'm at the point where all I do is sleep and I don't want to get out of bed. So let me just go try this thing. And so I was taught how to meditate, how to go into the body. And that was the first time that I started to see how there was a link between the sensations in my body and my thoughts. But not only that, I noticed something really crucial. I was like, for 10 days, I don't have to spend money, use money, interact with the human being, talk to them. But all I think about is money, day in, day out. Not having it, not being able to make it. And I could then see, because I was observing, as they say in Vipassana, the habit pattern of the mind, I was observing how those thoughts were impacting my physical body, right? And when I came out of there, a friend of mine said to me, what if this, so I'm explaining all this, and he was like, what if this is not just all yours? This is also your ancestors. You come from a family of healers and sangomas. So what if you go back to the roots of who you are and try to understand what African ancestry is? And so this is so interesting to me, right? Because I'm just like, what? So it's like, maybe link it to that and then see what is happening for you on a physical level as well, and try to then integrate all the different parts of you, not just like look at it from this is just you as an individual. And I was just like, what blew my mind? And that was the start of this work for me, because I was just like, I literally moved back home. I still had my $60,000 in debt, came back home, and I started listening. I started hearing, I started listening to what my mom had to say. Still had really terrible relationships with family members, but I was like, I started working on things, and I started to notice that when I started working on what was going on with me, I kept doing Vipassana, but then I got a life coach, and then she started saying to me, she was like, I noticed that you create your own exercises. Like after every session, you go back and you come back with a brand new exercise that you've created to do for yourself. So maybe just start keeping track of that. And I think that maybe this will be work that you end up teaching others. So I want to encourage you to do these exercises and to create these exercises and keep going and see what happens. That's what I did. And 3.5 years later, earning South African rands, most of my debt was denominated in dollars and pounds, $60,000 of it, I had paid it off.
Wow. Wow. That is, and now you're living a life of financial freedom and teaching the rest of us. And there's two things I really want to pick up on that you mentioned. And you know, I'm going to ask you to give it to me so that I can share this with everyone in short bursts. But can you tell me, what was the link? I mean, I don't know if it's possible to sum this up, but what was the link that you observed concerning African women and money that really showed you there's some work to do here?
Where to start? So I'm gonna start it from actually something I talk about in my next book, right? Which is, I talk about how money is very different for Black and brown people, right? And for us in particular, is that when you come with a legacy of oppression, oppression wasn't just oppression for the sake of oppression. Oppression was also about resources and finances. So there's so much that we then tie into, there's so many stories tied to that, right? So for example, if you take a country like South Africa or the US, where our ancestors built things, right? And then they were forcefully taken away from them. That is a trauma. It left our ancestors very powerless, right? And it left us feeling like, oh my God, it probably left them feeling like whatever I build will be taken away. So maybe don't build too big, don't do anything too flashy, only just keep what you can. Just do what you can because you don't want to lose it, right? And just keep yourself hidden. And I talk a lot about this idea of visibility and invisibility, that for most of us to survive, for our ancestors to survive, they had to be invisible and under the radar, you know? And I think as women in particular, if we're going to be talking about women, and particularly women of color, we have to talk about this, right? Is that we know, how do you stay safe as a woman most times? Is to invisibilize yourself.
You hide. Often, you hide.
Physically safe, right? In the middle of the night, or even as it starts to get dark, or even during the day, you're around a group of men and you're the only woman in a bar.
And your heart starts to pound.
Exactly. So there's this thing that we have taught ourselves to remain invisible in order to stay safe. And that story of invisibility has been passed on from generation to generation. And as a result, it's like, and also don't rock the boat. Here's the crazy thing about building wealth. Wealth does make you visible, right? There's only so much invisibility that you can have. But at some point, everybody knows who's the aunt or the uncle who is making more money in the family.
The favorite aunt and uncle.
Never ever spend that money. They'll be like, but you never ever spend your money. So what do you do with your money? It raises questions either way. You buy a fancy car. It's like, where do you get that money from?
Yeah.
Right. So there is that aspect that often it will bring some kind of eyes on you. Right. So if we have associated visibility with lack of safety, it becomes a problem, right? Because we will try to get rid of money in order to keep ourselves invisible so that we can keep ourselves safe. This is really important. The first thing to understand is that the brain and the mind is not created to keep us safe. Is not created to help us expand. The only role of the mind is to protect us and to keep us safe, right? So if the mind feels that anything that you do, or subconscious mind has taken on stories that are contrary to that if I make money, I will become visible, therefore it is unsafe. Guess what the mind is going to do? You're going to get rid of money as fast as possible, or you're going to block yourself from making money or growing money, right? So that's one of the first key things. The other thing is that systems of oppression teach us that we are not good enough. Right? We talk a lot, and again, I'm going to use the idea of being a woman, and particularly a Black woman. We talk a lot about like, why is it that like women don't like, why is it that they refuse positions of leadership when you give it to them? Why is it that women of color don't step up for this? In particular, Black women don't step up to certain leadership positions. Well, we already know, like, if you are growing up in a world where no one that is in positions of power looks like you, right? The internalized message, and they share no characteristic with you, right? If most of the people in leadership panels and positions and all that are white men, like you're neither white nor are you male. There is no,
No
there's
space for
no
me.
perfection, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes hard to believe that you can be in that position. And the subconscious messaging that most of us have gotten is that you are not good enough. You, as you, something that you cannot change is not good enough. And that's what I call the not good enough wound, right? So with the not good enough wound, it affects the way we perceive ourselves. And self perception is a huge part of how we grow, how we become successful and grow wealth, because we live in a world where everybody gets a no, right? Where we all face rejection. But it's one thing to face rejection when you believe you can do it, when you've seen others that look like you do it, you know that it's possible.
Yeah.
But to get a no where you have been told that everything about you is wrong, how you look, how you think, your culture, everything, and then not to even see anyone that looks like you hold certain positions or have that kind of wealth, that can completely break you and already take your self-confidence way down and make it hard for you to keep going, right? So those are just two examples of how we are impacted just differently as Black people, and in particular as Black women.
Yeah. But there's just so much there I wish I could dig out, but then I'd have to move in with you for like a week. So I know I can't do that. But can you give us a quick example, or just to help us make it practical? What does financial trauma in the body and in the mind feel or look like?
Oh, this is an easy one, right? Like, I'm going to use really practical examples. So, um, you're having a hard time checking your bank account, right? And so I ran a course called the Bank Account Challenge, where I get people to just look at their bank accounts. The first day, right? Getting people can't even open the app. They can't even print the bank statement. They can't even look at it, right? So everyone watching this, go try and look at your bank account and then do it every single day and see what happens. So most people will say, I tried, but I just can't go there. That's already like a freeze response, right? And I've had, then one of the things I do for people is to say, look at your bank account and then feel into your body. So we do a short little meditation so that they can feel their breath, they can observe their bodies. And they literally, people will say, but my entire body feels tight, like I want to scream, or I have a headache, or suddenly my digestive system is going out of whack. Some people will throw up. All sorts of things will happen, right? And that is like a physical response of the body just responding to bank accounts, right? Another common one is invoicing. How do you feel about invoicing, right? When you have to send an invoice. How many of us know that we have to send an invoice and we take a whole week to send an invoice? Wow. I've often been that person who has literally messaged people 3 or 4 times to be like, please, can you send me an invoice? I know what's going on because of the work that I do as a money coach, but I'm always like, wow, I've been in this situation. This is me. And nobody ever begged me to send an invoice, which was like really sad because I lost so much money. But I don't want that for people, right? So I often send those messages, and sometimes you have to send them several times. And I found that very, very interesting and very, very fascinating, you know? So people have a hard time sending invoices and a hard time. And part of that, again, is a freeze response. And a lot of the trauma that comes in, what if this won't be paid? What if they'll reject me? What if they think that I love money too much? What if they think I'm greedy, etc., etc.? And it's just ongoing. All that is trauma, the thoughts that we feel, but then they lead us to freeze response in the body, and then we can't take action. Our behaviors impacted. Sorry, like all these words today.
No, not at all.
I'm 1 day from my cycle, so I'm dealing with period brain as well.
I can relate to that.
right? It's like suddenly like words don't make sense. It's crazy.
You gotta have some chocolate, then you'll be okay.
Right. Um, so, and then the other one that I love is pricing or negotiating for your salary.
Oh,
How
God.
many How many people have gone into maybe a job interview? So if you're listening to this, you go to a job interview, they ask you, what's your salary? What is the salary that you hope for? Now, you know it in your head, but you can't get it out of your mouth, or you know it in your head, but what comes out of your mouth is something that is discounted by 50%, you know? Is like, how often have we done that? And even as entrepreneurs, where someone asks for your pricing, and that's what comes out of your mouth isn't what you know you want to charge, right? Why is that? That's part of trauma. Or someone asks you for your pricing in an email. They say, okay, what's your pricing? Can you please send us a rate card, or can you send us a proposal? And you're just like, and it takes you like weeks to get back to the person, right? A lot of that is us being in a freeze response or a flight response. We're avoiding. The minute we go into avoidance, we're in flight mode, right? Or we start fighting ourselves. That's when like the fight is happening internally. We're having a thought in the head. Oh, this is how much my price is, but the words that come out are like 50% off, right? So that is, yes, that's money trauma, right? And most of us don't even see it. We just think, oh, I have a confidence issue. I have this issue around money. Like I'm having a hard time stating my value. And I always say to people, that is also part of the issue, is that we have conflated value with pricing, right? We've conflated our worth with pricing. A lot of people will come to me and say, I want to be able to start charging my worth and start charging what I deserve. And I always say to people, that's impossible. What you're worth is priceless, you know? So like, and so that's also a lot of stuff. And we don't realize that in some of the things that we pick up in trying to heal ourselves, we are also adding more complexity to the process of healing, because now we're starting to equate what we're getting paid with our worthiness. And that should not even be a conversation. Like you can't, like, doesn't matter how much I charge, you can never equate that with my worthiness. Even when I'm charging way more than the average in the industry, it doesn't mean that I'm worth more. And that's where like people start to mess up with also pricing and talking about money and re-traumatizing themselves, right? Because then you think if someone doesn't agree to my pricing, then that means that they don't agree to my value and they don't see my worth. No, I see your worth. I just don't agree to your pricing. And everyone is allowed to that, right? Everyone is allowed to debate with me on my pricing, refuse it, but it shouldn't be the thing that affects my worth, and it shouldn't be affecting my value.
I mean, just that alone, it's suddenly not personal anymore. Just the way you phrase that, it's like, okay, we can disagree. Doesn't mean I'm unworthy. And I think that is, Vangile, do you have a year for us to do? We'll coach from wherever you are. I'm sure all the women that are watching this will agree. And I mean, there's so much you covered in this short space of time, including the questions I had about how do we subconsciously reject money. But I'm sure there's a link there between the trauma and the energy we carry around money as well. But are there typical habits, do you think, that we can start, or not even habits? Let me rephrase it this way. How do we move away from subconsciously rejecting money to then opening ourselves up to it and accepting it? I mean, that's not simple, because I mean, you did the years and years of work. So ladies, when you're watching this, get this right. This is years of work. But just so that, for when women want to reach out to you even, what is the process that we can start right now? Because hearing you talk, I'm like, oh my word, I want to start right now. How do we just try and flip moving away from rejecting money to opening ourselves up to accepting it?
Yeah. So can I just put a caveat on this? Because I feel like I went through thing. I don't know if you saw, but I made announcements in end of November, December, where I was facing like public shaming, right? For me and all that, and how that then impacted my ability to receive money, right? And I was, and because it made me doubt myself, it made me go into a spiral of doubting myself. So why I'm sharing this is to say it is possible that like you do the work, and even as you do the work, incidents in life happen, and then you just like get to the next level and it just completely blocks you and you start rejecting money again in an effort to keep myself invisible. I was like, oh my God, I see this. So I love this question because I think I had to go through the process again. And I always say to my clients that with every new level, it doesn't have to come with public shaming. It doesn't have to come with all sorts of things, being a social pariah, all sorts of things. It can come with just like our own things internally that are then triggered, right? And those triggers will then have us blocking money. So the first thing is to acknowledge. Sometimes you don't even see that you're blocking money, right? So just by acknowledging what is happening in my finances right now, just being like, oh, I seem to have hit a ceiling or a set point where every month I can only bring this much money in. It doesn't matter what I do, what I'm trying to do. This is as much as I can bring in. So now you've acknowledged the problem, right? Or in my case, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Company revenue is dropping, and I'm losing a lot in terms of revenue. I see it, so start from there, right? And then you work with that. So then you sit with it. You sit with it in your body and you start to see, how does this feel? And you can ask yourself, how does it feel, the idea of making just a bit more money? What I like to do is then I write a figure down, right? It's to say, this is what I am currently making.
Yeah.
This is how much I would like to make. And then to feel into the body with the new figure and say, how does this feel in my body? And this may take time to really sit. If you haven't done this and you're not a person that listens to their body, so maybe start with like 5 minutes. I mean, I did like an hour right off the bat. Then I started to increase it until I was like doing 3-4 hours a day and going into past lives and unpacking it, right? And then like my ancestors were talking about it, and like I saw all sorts of ancestral memories. But you can build up to it because the body holds things, right? The body holds memory. Your body has the answers. It's got the wisdom. So you just I would say, I start people off at like 5 minutes, and then like say maybe within 10 days get to 15 minutes. And if you're doing it on your own without a coach or someone who's trauma informed or any of that, I say start at like 15 to 30 minutes. It will take you longer, but the process, it still works, right? And just feel, how does it feel? And acknowledge every emotion. So, and every sensation. And sometimes it will just be the sensations and you may not understand what's coming up, right? And just be with that. Just be with that and feel into it and keep feeling into it. And then ask yourself, and then maybe start noticing what are the emotions that are behind that sensation every time you do this. I also like to do breath work with this, and then also start to jot down the thoughts after this process. Notice what thoughts are coming up within a 2-hour period once you're done with your 15 minutes, right? Because now you've gone into the body, you've been breathing, you've been noticing where the tension is stored. Just notice what are the thoughts that are coming up, then write those thoughts down. Give yourself permission to meditate on the thoughts, and then question the thoughts, question their validity. I have clients who go through this process on their own after maybe a mastermind session or a coaching session, or even when they do my courses. And I say, keep a running journal of say 50 thoughts that come up after this process. And then we'll work through each and every thought individually, right? Because each thought there is causing a lot of blocks. It's like on a mindset level, and on an energetic level and also on a physical level. So I also have people work with the thought directly in the body. So they go into the body, they try to figure out where does it come from? Is it an ancestral thought? Letting the body answer all those questions. Is it a past life memory? Is it tied to something? And then it just takes patience, and I guess sometimes just like having a person hold space for you so that you feel safe enough to unlock that. Because for some people it's like, oh my God, I'm seeing a past life for the first time, and it can be really, really scary. But you'll notice that as you work through the thoughts, they stop having their power, and then it feels like magic happens, you know. So it's insane. I've seen it even with myself the last few months. I'm like, this work is a magic, you know, it's
Yeah.
really, really, it's insane.
Wow. Oh, Vangi, I mean, just that alone, and I loved what you said about, sometimes, and we're going to go try this on our own, because I know I will, but I'm very fortunate to have a tribe of coaches. My life coach practices, she's a TRE practitioner, and she does lots of trauma integration. I know I just have to go look at your page, and I'm like, what videos have been released, what courses are happening, what new things are happening, and then there's just so much that unlocks based on that. So thank you so much for that. And then the last two questions I want to ask you, because I struggled with this personally. How important is our energy? I mean, we talk about making money, but even around spending money, that's a big one. Can you just talk to us briefly about that?
Yeah, I think most of us are so scared of spending money, right? Because, and I think a huge part of it, and I've spent time really, really reflecting on this because, as I said, like I went through this period, right, of my life, and I was just like, and my sister said something interesting to me. She was like, this is the first time I see you actually worry about spending money, you know? And so I was like, what do you mean by that? She's like, you're always so chilled about it. And I had this realization that when I'm scared of spending money, it's because my energy is impacted by the belief that this is almost probably like this is the last bit of money that I will ever have.
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
And it's because believe that like I have the ability to keep generating money and to keep making it. And so this led me down a whole thought process that I will share on here, that I started to realize that I was like, where does this come from? Because I am that kind of person. Anyone listening to this is probably getting the picture that I don't just go, ooh, this is happening, right? I go, what is happening here? And then I sit down, I spend days on thing, right? Because I'm like, it's going to help all my clients, you know, so that like I can figure out exactly what is the underlying thought process, where do we get it from? And I was like, oh, this still comes back to the fact that like growing up in families, in a family where, and I guess families, extended families, being Black and South African, right? Yeah. Where you are noticing that everyone gets paid once a month. And so when money does run out mid-month or start to dip, there's so much anxiety and fear and panic. And what then comes up is, as a child learning this, you are co-regulating to your caregiver's nervous systems. But not only that, you are also learning their thought process, because through that regulation, which is really through that co-dysregulation, really, not even just co-regulation, is that you are learning that, oh my gosh, money runs out. And when money runs out, we panic, we freak out, right? It was never, and I realized that I never got the learnings. My inner child did, but my inner team didn't, because my mom was an entrepreneur, so, and is still an entrepreneur. So I got two messages, right? When my mom's business started to go under and everything, that's when I started to learn the panic, and everyone else around her, my uncle, etc. But what we learn in that point is, when money runs out, we panic, and that is the end. We have to wait until payday to make more money. So we have learned this, and not only have we learned it, we've internalized it and embodied it. Not once did we see, oh, money runs out, heck, I can go out and make more money. And it took me a second until my sister said that to me, where I was like, wait, what has changed? Why am I now behaving like this? And I was like, And then it came to me, oh, it's because I've trained myself over the years that if I see money running out or running low, I get up and I go, okay, let's go make more.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go figure out a way to make more. But when you are being hijacked by your inner child and your inner teen that have learned these messages, they go straight into what they have co-dysregulated to, those memories. The body remembers that, and you go into the same nervous system response as your caregivers, as you see money running out. So then, like, you have a hard time spending money, right?
Yeah. Vangi, you're saying that, and I'm just thinking about my own children, because my husband and I promised each other and ourselves that we would not cause panic about money around our children, because as you said, Black and brown people, there is a lot of trauma there. And I never, ever speak the words, we don't have money. I don't do it around them. And it's so interesting, in speaking to my best friend, I was like, geez, these kids think we're made of money. But I realized it's because they feel that safety with us.
Yeah.
So even though I know I have a ton of work to do around money, at least in that regard, being so aware of it, I'm passing the right message, because the truth is, you and I both know that there is abundance. You know, the world has been created with abundance. And now instead we say to the girls, okay, you want that toy, how are we going to make the money so that you can get that toy? You know, and they'll come up with creative ways to make the money that they get paid from us. So thank you for that. That is
right. And they're learning that if I want a thing, I can go work for it, I can offer a service, and I can make the money.
Yes.
And I think that we don't get taught that. What most of us saw was that you wait for payday and then you make it work on this small little amount of money until the next payday. And what that teaches us is that we wait on money, right? Versus we go and we make money and we keep getting money coming to us. And that's one of the things that I was like, so when we talk about the energy of money and spending money, we also have to talk about the energy that we've learned around what it means to make money and the energy of waiting on money.
Wow, that is so powerful. I have to share something with you personally. I'm going to cut this out. But my daughter's talking about that. And my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. My husband is a brilliant choreographer. But you also know the trauma that exists around the poor artists and how much work he's had to do there. But anyway, so, you know, especially during lockdown, she saw us doing business from home, my eldest. And one day my cousin walked in, and my daughter sketches very well. And she said, look, Auntie Kirsty, I made this for you. And it was this beautiful girl in an evening dress. And she said, oh my word, I love it so much. So Kezia said, oh, okay, are you going to keep it? She said, yes, I am. She said, I'll send you the invoice. That'll be 200 Rand, please. And she's 9. She said, no, I need to get it. She said, there's this toy I want, and so I need to start making money. So Vangi, she's doing something right. And I said,
wow,
that's quote first. When they accept the quote, you send the invoice. She ended up making $50. So it's very cool. Okay, let me take a break. Last question. Can you give us your top, even if it's 1 tip or 2 tips, for how we can start changing our relationship with money so that that relationship works for us?
Oh, okay. So how do we start changing our relationship with money so that relationship works with us? I think for me, the easiest way that I think we can start changing our relationship with money is to really go back to the basics of what I teach, which is you look at your bank account for 5 minutes every day. You know, this is like the staple of what I teach. And I think it seems like so blah, so grade A, so, you know, grade 1 work in the money work. But the truth is, even I don't know how I'm feeling about money some days. Like, I know I'm feeling like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. Money loves me. Oh my gosh. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated. Everything sucks. The world is against me. But like, I'm not really understanding how that feels in my body, what is happening in the body, and how it's translating into my bank account. So just looking at my bank account and then allowing myself to feel the emotions, to breathe through it, to observe my breath, and then to observe the sensations in my body is so powerful. I find that like if I just do that consistently, even for a week or 30 days, so much starts to shift in. It may not always be just in the financial aspect, but it may be in the way that like I view money and the way that I see things, you know? And I sometimes I do this actually often, especially I think as an entrepreneur, at times you're just like, oh my God, how am I going to do? How am I going to get all the things that I want to get? How am I going to get all these things done? And how am I going to pay for them? And also as a traveler, someone who's constantly traveling, right? And I talk about how I do cash travels. I don't use my credit cards. Sometimes I want to do certain things and I'm moving from country to country. I have to pay for flights. I have to do this. Like I'm often on the road, right?
Yeah.
And money does become tight because you're running a business
Yes.
and you're doing everything. And I'm also doing other things where I'm investing in other businesses to create more cash flow. And so I find that when I do that, it's so fascinating. And I just did this exercise again for a week, last week. And I'm actually very mind blown because of the decisions that I then made with money that were just insane, you know, but like incredible is what I like. I mean, insanely incredible, you know, because I was like, wow, I didn't know how I was going to do A, B, C, D, but just by looking at this, feeling my sensations in my body, going into my emotions, feeling my emotions, surrendering to everything, doing the inner work. So I did some of my meditations as well in the Money Magic course. Everything just came together beautifully. And I remember thinking to myself, I think on Saturday, I was like, what was my problem? Like, why was I so hyped up about all this other stuff? And I realized that's because, like, when you're in the midst of like the thoughts and the trauma and everything, you go right back to childhood, like I said, right? And it completely affects you. So it's a whole different ball game. And then when you are able to hold yourself and create that space for yourself, you create almost like a distance between what is going on and your reaction to what's going on, and everything starts to shift radically.
Wow, Vangi, there's so much that I wish I could unpack with you, but I know that it's not possible. But just there's so many takeaways, like that even the children and our inner child can be such a great teacher when we're just sitting with it. And thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for, I mean, what you do is so profoundly gentle but groundbreaking at the same time. And the marriage of those two things, I just think is, I mean, I've seen the testimonials. I mean, I've set a goal that I want to do your money magic course one day. And I've just seen the testimonials that come out of that. And I know that you're changing hundreds of lives. And I can't wait. You know, I'm going to be on the sidelines observing as this continues to change thousands of lives. So thank you so much on behalf of LDH and all the women on our platform. And we'll keep you posted. I can't wait to see where you're jetting off to next. Please, God, no scorpions. So
I'm not sharing the country just yet, but I've been before.
okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, for now I'm going to a brand new country in May though. So that's going to be awesome.
Amazing.
May or June.
Amazing.